Welcome to Future Talk. I recently attended the Innovation for Jobs Summit meeting, also known as the I4J Summit. It was a two-day international conference of leaders from different sectors of society discussing how to harness technological innovation to create meaningful jobs for more people. A bit later, we'll show some of my interviews from the summit, but now I'd like to introduce my guests, Curt Carlson and David Nordfors. Curt Carlson is president and CEO of SRI International, which is one of the world's most innovative research and development organizations, and which served as host for the I4J Summit. David Nordfors is director of the I4J and was the chief organizer of the summit. Gentlemen, welcome to the program.
Welcome. Great to be with you.
Curt, let me start with you. What was the purpose of the I4J Summit? What were you actually hoping to accomplish there?
Well, David organized the whole event around what I consider to be one of the biggest themes in the world today, which is why aren't we creating enough jobs, meaningful jobs, to keep people employed? It's not just a problem that we have in the United States. It's a problem, obviously, that cuts all the way through Europe. And to us, the paradox is it's the best time for innovation ever. There's never been a better time for innovation. Why aren't we being able to tackle those innovations and create the kind of jobs we need?
Were you saying that innovation isn't creating enough jobs, or maybe it's even acting counter to job creation in some ways?
Well, innovation always does both, right? It changes the ecosystem, as we call it. So some jobs go away. Obviously, that's happened in agriculture and in manufacturing. But it's always been taken up by some new set of jobs and opportunities. And the question David posed, which he'll tell you about, is are we going to be able to create enough jobs from where we're going and the kind of innovations we see? It's easy to see the jobs that are going away. It's very hard because, by definition, innovation is always something in the future. How do we begin to get our minds around what ought to be possible and how ought to academia respond to it, how should government respond to it, and how should communities and companies respond to it?
So David, what was your motivation for organizing this whole summit meeting? Why did you pick this particular problem to work on?
I was always interested in it. I'm interested in how innovation improves people's lives. And what I noticed, I have a background in innovation policy, basically worked a lot with this in Sweden. And when I discussed with my friend Sven Littorin, who was the Minister for Employment, we kind of noticed that it was completely separate issues. The people who talk about jobs don't talk about innovation, and the people who talk about innovation don't talk about jobs. So we know how to talk about innovation for profit, but we don't know how to talk about innovation for jobs. So it seems kind of natural that innovation creates jobs, but we don't really know how to talk about it, plan for it, strategize for it. And we're seeing the problem now because unemployment is going up at the same go as companies are having difficulties to find people to hire.
Now, many types of jobs, that type of work which is fairly simple can be replaced by machines or robots. But I understand that some high-tech jobs you can't find enough qualified people. So which is the major concern? The fact that you can't find enough people to fill the jobs that you're trying to fill, or that the general level of unemployment is too high?
Well, the thing is that things are changing very fast. And we aren't constructed for change, or rather society isn't constructed for change today. We have educational systems and employment systems that are giving us educations and sort of brokering jobs that perhaps aren't very much needed anymore. So the reason to why employment is going up while people can't find good people to employ with the right skills is because most of people's skills are getting old and we don't have an education system to replenish them.
Now, one of the purposes of the conference was to generate ideas. Did any good ideas come out that might be actionable?
Well, it's hard to say how you address a problem like this. The way I personally think about it is, again, as I said, there's plenty of opportunities for innovation. But Do we have the skills? Do we have the people, as David was just saying, who can develop those? And the answer is no, we don't have enough people. For example, in America, one of our big problems is half our disadvantaged young people in our major 50 cities don't get through algebra. And there are an estimate of 3 million manufacturing jobs that are open in America that can't be filled because we don't have people with the right technical STEM background to be able to take advantage of them. So I think education was one of the big themes in the conference, and I think everyone agrees that we need to do a better job. And fortunately, given the advent of digital technologies, you can begin to see that we can, for the first time ever, begin to address that. But it also takes a change in government policy for America to be more competitive, and companies need to be more aggressive about their innovation policies.
Now, one of the themes of the summit meeting was that society is organized into vertical silos.
Yes.
So one silo could be government, one silo could be the corporate world,
Yes.
one silo could be academia. And these different silos have trouble working together. Could you elaborate a little bit on that?
Yes. It's actually very simple. We are organized for an economy that where the economic growth is driven by doing more of the same. But the big shift in the economy that has happened is that we've gone to the innovation economy where economic growth is driven by doing new things that replace old things. And this is even on the short-term scale. So in short, the main activity, the core activity of companies today is the next product, not the present product. This is the shift. And this means that we must all the time now challenge the silos that we built up in order to be as effective as possible to do the same things. And we aren't very good at challenging that. If you look at the ministries for labor, they have labor economists, and you have ministries that deal with innovation, they have economists that look more at microeconomy and innovation. So these guys don't talk to each other.
Is it a problem of communication? Like, if only people would talk more and communicate more, they would be able to figure out what to do?
First off, this problem is becoming known across society. So David formed a whole organization to address this and to bring attention to these different silos that he just talked about. But it's becoming widely recognized. For example, if you want to tackle any of the big innovation issues in the world today, whether it's the environment or healthcare, they're all multidisciplinary. You have to work across the silos to be effective. What David is bringing to the conversation is not just the kind of technical diversity and bringing artists, for example, in and appreciating what they can do for design, but how do you begin to bring politics and politicians and the journalists into this picture so that they can talk effectively about these issues? And one of David's big points, which I'm sure he'll elaborate on, is most of those groups don't even have a language to talk to each other, and that's where it starts.
Right.
And we're going to continue this conversation shortly, but first, we have some footage from the summit meeting itself, some of my interviews with the attendees. We're going to show that tape, and then we'll get back to our conversation. Let's go ahead and roll that tape. The I4J Summit included about 60 leaders from different sectors of society, all working on a common problem: how to use innovation to create more meaningful work opportunities and provide people the training needed to fill high-tech jobs. Vint Cerf is widely regarded as one of the fathers of the Internet. He's currently Vice President and Chief Internet Evangelist at Google and was the seed sponsor of the I4J Summit.
This is all about trying to understand the connection between innovation and jobs, and it doesn't turn out that every innovation produces jobs. And so the people who are here, this small group of about 50 or 60 people, are trying to sort through what is it that allows you to transform an innovation into a job-producing phenomenon.
Well, what's the problem that you're trying to solve? Is it that there aren't enough jobs today?
Well, there's not enough work, that remunerative work, for one thing. There may not be enough satisfying work. A lot of people have jobs and they're not happy. So that's one problem. The other problem is understanding how to transform innovative ideas into something that produces satisfying work. And that linkage is not clear. There are a whole collection of little gears that all have to be meshed together. Our problem is to figure out what are the gears and how do they have to be meshed together to go from innovation to job and work creation.
Now, is the goal of this conference to come up with a set of recommendations that can be implemented to solve the problem?
Absolutely not. The goal, at least my goal in this conference, is to get people to discover insights that they didn't have because they never talked to somebody who had that particular perspective. So we have business people and research people, we have economists, we have people who are from the press, we have people from different lines of business, all of whom have very different perspectives, and some of whom may discover they have vocabulary problems even figuring out what the other guy is talking about, which is an important learning experience. I just want people to come away from this conference with some ideas that they didn't have before.
How much profile does this conference have? Do you have people in Washington and corporate centers paying close attention?
No, we kept this invitation only. We wanted this not to, our purpose is not publicity. Our purpose is ideas and insight.
Sven Otto Littorin is a Swedish politician and past president of the European Council of Ministers. He was also a senior consultant for the I4J Summit.
Now, when we talk about innovation, we know from economic science that innovation explains 3/4 of economic growth over time. But most of it is incremental innovation that affects productivity growth. So is there a way for us to take some of this economic factors that innovation influences and turn it into new jobs instead? Is it good? What do we do? What are the policy measures? And frankly, we don't really know. And that's why this conference is an important contribution to finding out.
Can innovation be planned, or does innovation by its nature happen kind of spontaneously?
I think you're absolutely right. It happens spontaneously. And the best advice for national governments is probably to stay out of the way.
Are they taking that advice?
No. No, and that's the problem. Because since there's very little research done in economics on this connection between innovation and jobs. And the very fact that we have very strict silos in politics, in media, and in research, and in business, where people who are doing innovation can't talk to people who are doing growth economics, for instance. They can't speak the same language. They don't have the same models. They don't understand each other.
When we talk about government policy, there's often a factor of risk avoidance. Like, you don't know that the thing will work, maybe it will, but how much risk are you willing to take? Especially in a place where you might get voted out of office.
You're absolutely on the spot. I think that's the real problem that, I mean, I'm a recovering politician. I know exactly what you're talking about. Every politician wants to become re-elected. That's the whole point, right? So you have a sort of a 4-year time horizon where you look at what you can do to maximize your outcome in 4 years. And that's an issue because lots of the things that we believe are important for innovation leading to job creation, things like education, for instance. Now, if you do changes to the educational system today, I mean, the real effects of that aren't seen until 10, 20 years from now. So there are very small incentives for politicians to do the real structural reforms that are needed.
Many of the people at the I4J Summit focused on the need to improve our educational systems. Irwin Jacobs is the co-founder and chairman emeritus of Qualcomm, the huge telecommunications company. He's given a lot of thought to this issue. How far behind are we right now? Are we worried about not being able to fill tomorrow's jobs, or is it that we can't even fill today's high-tech jobs?
We already cannot fill today's high-tech jobs. We have, as you know, great universities. We train excellent students. We just don't train enough of them in the subjects that are most rapidly changing, namely science, technology, engineering, and math type subjects. And so we need to encourage more students to prepare themselves and then take those subjects.
Now, what's the basic approach? Do you have a specific educational model that differs from the traditional model?
Well, of course, cell phones are now available to about, well, there are over 6 billion connections in the world, 7 billion people, so we're getting right up there. The question is how to use this mobile technology. We've been finding that when students have that available to them 24/7, it can make a major impact on their education.
But we're also talking about remote learning where the student doesn't have to show up physically in the classroom.
Yeah, I think these MOOCs, the massive online open courses or open online courses,
Right.
are in fact have a great place in the future. In fact, one of the things I've been thinking about is whether for a 4-year college, in order to cut the cost, one might have the first year be on campus, meet the students, meet the faculty, get a feeling for what the college is all about. The next 2 years be virtual, and then come back for your final year where you do your networking. As a result, perhaps you can pass twice as many students through for the same physical resources and faculty and cost.
Nowadays, a typical person is about 21 years old by the time they get a basic college degree. Is that taking too long? Is there any way to compress it so people could be done with their education sooner and enter the workplace earlier?
Well, of course, again, using mobile technologies, textbooks, for example, you can personalize the education a lot better than we're doing now. And so at present, you group people by their age as opposed to their ability and their progress through the subject material. If you can personalize it more, yes, some students will get done a little sooner, some will get done later. I think they'll all get a better education.
Esther Wojcicki is the founder of the nation's largest high school journalism program at Palo Alto High School and is widely recognized as a leading innovator in education. She had an interesting perspective to offer.
Well, I think that the main problem in education today that we need to overcome is the role of the classroom teacher. How do we change that role of the classroom teacher so that teacher provides more opportunities for students to have independent learning?
What's wrong with the role of the teacher now? What is the teacher doing wrong today?
Well, so the majority of teachers today, like over 70%, lecture full time. So they lecture, the student takes notes, and then the student takes a test on what was the material. So the question is, how does that result in the kinds of skills that we need for students today? How do students learn how to collaborate, think independently, get information off the internet, get information in their communities when most of the information is just given to them in lecture, and then the main thing they're supposed to do is really to memorize and give it back to the teacher.
So is the problem that the teachers themselves are not properly trained, and if they were, this problem could be solved?
I would say that the majority of teachers are teaching the way that they were taught 100 years ago. It's a tradition.
What would it take to change the teaching style?
Well, one thing would be, I think we need to provide incentives for teachers to change. We need to also recognize that a classroom that's noisy, where students are interacting all the time, is considered a good environment. The model that is in most people's minds is that students are sitting politely, quietly in rows, and then raising their hand, and then interacting. The interaction is primarily between the teacher and the student. You know, teacher asks a question, student responds, other students listen to the response. This is an old model that worked pretty well, actually, prior to the technical revolution, but doesn't really work well today.
And that was some of my interviews from the I4J Summit. During the 2-day period, I actually interviewed about 30 people, but we couldn't possibly fit them all on one show. But not to worry, they're all going to be uploaded to the internet. Some of them already have been, and you can see them by going to our website, futuretalk.net, and clicking on I4J Summit. Now, gentlemen, where does change have to come from? If we're talking about changing society and somehow, where does it start? Is it top down or bottom up?
Well, I think the conference, David's conference, proved that a lot of what's happening is positive is coming from the bottom up right now. There are people like Esther, and there are many people across America who are changing the educational system. Local governments are responding in different ways. We see that everywhere we go. There are entrepreneurs who are coming and starting schools because they realize what a problem we have. So yes, it takes a long time, but a lot of really good things are happening from the bottom up.
Now, there's a movement in education today to centralize it, to make all school systems meet federal standards out of the concern that some school systems are lagging behind. Do you think that uniform standards help the cause of education or harm it?
Well, you just heard from Irwin that education is going to change profoundly. And At SRI, we have some of the children of our staff are taking, serious college-level math courses using MOOCs at 13 years of age. So the traditional kind of education we're going to see where one size fits all, I think, is going to be kind of broken apart. Because we all learn differently. We all want to learn differently. We all learn in different ways. And the digital technologies that we're developing are going to allow that for the first time. I think it's, education for 200,000 years has been a handcrafted discipline. It's about to go through a revolution where digital technology is really going to make a difference to it. Teachers aren't going away, as was described, but they are going to become more like mentors and experiential learners, help students develop different skills.
So I think that one has to look at this in some kind of aggregated picture, look at things together. It's about innovation and education and jobs. And ultimately, it's about having a good society, right? So we want to have a society where we create value for each other, where we can have good family life, where we can feel happy, we can be safe. And, in the innovation community, we feel that we are producing all the tools for people to do that. But at the same go, if you're 25 and you haven't had your first job, you might not get a job. If you're over 40, and you need a new job, you might not get it. And you know what? We're expected to live up past our 80s. So that is really a lot of paradoxes there, things that are not working, that are not making us happy. So even though innovation is good, it sort of doesn't fit into the society we have. So we have to remake the economic system. We have to remake how we think about jobs, about education, and it has to fit together. And we can't go on having these silos with people taking decisions independently about innovation or about education or about labor market. It has to go across, and we don't know how to do that yet.
Now, isn't there a problem in that people are often jealous of their turf? Like if you're in the media, you don't want someone from the government telling you what to do. And if you're in the government, you don't want to tell corporations telling you what to do, although maybe they will end up telling you what to do anyway. So it seems like there's a lot of resistance to any kind of change.
Yes.
Is structural change sufficient, or do we need some kind of attitudinal change?
Yes, and this is why we are approaching thought leadership and top leadership. We can't solve this issue yet on a mass scale, I think, by letting organization A talk to organization B on the operative mid-levels. It has to be small meetings with visionary people, top leaders like Curt, like Vint, like Irwin, thought leaders like Esther, and get these people together so that they get to know each other and develop a common language, and that it then can spread. So this was only the first meeting, and I can say that Vint and Curt have already agreed to sponsor a second summit that's going to be in March 2014. And that we in between are discussing with a lot of other organizations about having summits and workshops in DC, in Paris, in Germany, different countries. So we hope to this way weave a network of top leadership in an informal discussion in how to approach this existential issue.
Well, I think you've got a certain amount of recognition. I think President Obama sent you a congratulatory note.
Yes. Yes, we were very grateful. I don't know how often he sends messages to meetings of 60 people, but it was a whole lot of president per person. So we were very flattered by that.
But that probably helps, because you're probably trying to attract people who get invited to all kinds of things. So why should they pick this? Well, if you're endorsed by the president, and I guess you could call it an endorsement, that might carry some weight.
Yes.
Well, I'm actually on the President Obama's Innovation Council, and this is one of President Obama's major initiatives to, if we're not good at innovation, we obviously can't have a society that can thrive and take care of the poor and our environmental issues and all the other things we have. So what David's doing to try and get a consensus is too strong, but a better agreement between these groups, I think, is a very positive step.
It's to try to get people to think a bit more not in the same way, but understand how other people think. Because, for example, if you're in the innovation side, you often think in terms of profit and company. You've got to have a well-working company. And you know, if you have a company that employs a number of losers, you get rid of these people and you get a better company. But if you have a society with a lot of losers, you won't get a better society by getting rid of them. You know, you'll get a much worse society. At the end of the day, I think that when we think about improving society, we have to accept that we can't get rid of people because they don't produce. No. And so therefore, everybody can create value. And we just got to innovate and find ways that enables everybody to create value in such a way that we build wealth and well-being.
And we even have a consensus on what constitutes a good society. So, for example, we'd like wealth and we'd like to have good family life. Sometimes those things have an inverse ratio, like the wealthier you get, the worse your family life can become in many cases.
Well, our issue right now is really creating enough jobs. I think that's our big issue. And you know, David already mentioned it, but we're in the global innovation economy. The global innovation economy is the most exciting time ever because there are more big innovations that can be developed, but it's also the most competitive time. And for a society to have the virtues that David just described and where it fits together, you have to adapt to that world. And because it moves so fast, that adaptation is really the change that you were talking about. How do we get people to understand it, which is what David's working to do, and then how do you get these different groups to talk to each other in a way that they can actually do things that are constructive? You know, in Washington, we don't have too many people who've been in business, in particular ones who've worked globally to see what's going on around the world. And David's working to bring people from other nations into this discussion so we can add that perspective.
And I wish you the best of luck in that. We are out of time, so we are going to have to leave it at that. I've been speaking with Curt Carlson, President and CEO of SRI International, and David Nordfors, head of the IIIJ and chief organizer of the I4J Summit. I'm Marty Wasserman. Visit our website, www.futuretalk.net. For Future Talk, see you next time. Okay.